Battlefield 5's Pacific DLC is coming up very soon. And while I am excited to have the M1 Garand, the most iconic weapon from the war, in my hands, I want to talk about something different. Because everyone is talking about the Pacific DLC and all the different things that are going to be coming with it. I want to talk about what could be coming after the Pacific, the Eastern Front. As you can tell by the title, I have compiled a list of things that I think would fit into Battlefield 5 for the Russian DLC fairly well. So sit back and enjoy. I'm going to start with tanks. Now, the Soviets used several different tanks throughout the war, even used some Lend-Lease, so they were running around with American tanks up until they started building their own tanks en masse. Starting up, the BT-5 light tank. Literally, in Russian, it just means fast tank. That's it, Russian. It was very lightly armed, and there were some accounts that it could be easily taken down by an anti-tank rifle, so all you assholes who used the Panzerbuchse en masse can rejoice. Its main armament was a 45mm gun, however there were variants that were armed with a 75mm howitzer, similar to the light tank in Battlefield 1 where it was armed with a howitzer, as well as one DT machine gun that was mounted in the turret. Moving on to the medium tanks, you all saw this coming, the T-34, very comparable to the Sherman tank. It was armed with a 76.2mm main gun, not the strongest, but it was a fairly beefy gun, as well as two 7.62 machine guns, one mounted in the front for the driver, and one mounted coaxial on the turret. Very iconic tank. I would love to be able to drive one of these. The last time I was able to drive one of these, it was back in World of War. Now for the heavy tank to compete with the Tiger. Of all the different ones they had, I picked the KV-1. It was heavily armored, but it was using the same gun as the T-34, the 76mm gun. However, with the specializations, I'm going off of the way that DICE did the Wirbelwind, or the Flakpanzer as it's called in the game, but it's called the Wirbelwind. You could upgrade the KV-1 through specializations to the KV-2, arming it with the 152mm cannon. Now the KV-2 was literally the KV-1 with a ship turret put on top of it. So it might be a little bit overpowered, but it could also be a lot of fun. This also had two DT machine guns, one on the hull and one on the turret. Now for a tank destroyer, to compete with the Valentine Archer and the Stug, I went around for a little while trying to piece together. I found one that I think would kind of fit, the ZIS-30. Now this was basically just a Kasamolets with a 57mm gun mounted on the back of it. This was a rather large gun, capable of duking it out with Tigers, if the Tiger didn't see him first. It also had one DT machine gun. Now anti-aircraft is a little bit tricky as I wasn't able to find any decent anti-aircraft guns. The only one that I could think of that comes to memory is one of the ZIL pickup trucks with the, forgive me, I don't remember the name of the anti-aircraft gun, but it had a anti-aircraft gun mounted on the back bed. So that's the thing. Now moving on to the part you probably care more about, the weapons, the firearms for the infantry. I'm going to start with the one that everybody wants, the Scout. The Mosin Nagant 91-30. 7.62, used pretty much from the First World War all the way up to the 1960s. The Mosin is the most iconic weapon from the Soviet arsenal. They were mostly built with a 3.5 times scope, but knowing DICE, they're probably going to put a bigger scope on it. And all in all, it's just a really good rifle. And this will come back a little bit later, so be patient. Next up, we have the anti-material rifle, because DICE doesn't know how to balance a game. There are two well-known Soviet anti-material rifles, the PTR-D41 and the PTRS-41. Of the two that I say I would rather have in the game, because I bet you there's going to be more anti-material rifles in the game, is the PTR-D, because it's a much easier weapon to balance. The PTR-D was a single shot 14.5mm anti-material rifle, as opposed to the PTRS, which was a 14.5mm semi-automatic 5-round internal magazine anti-material rifle. Like I said, much easier to balance if it's a single shot rather than semi-automatic, because then you just have these guys laying prone, just plinking away with an anti-material rifle. So, PTR-D. Next up we have the Assault. Now this one was kind of interesting. I was going to have a semi-automatic rifle for the Scout, but it's a little bit iffy. There's not many. So for the Assault, there's actually 3 weapons here. The SVT-40. It's got a 10-round magazine, fires 7.62 semi-automatic. Fairly iconic gun. Like I said, last time we used it, we were in World at War. Actually, Call of Duty World War II, I believe, had it, but we don't talk about that game. Now, for an assault rifle, the Fedorov Avtomat. Now, I know what you're thinking. This gun was just in Battlefield 1. Why would I want it back in this game? It wasn't used in World War II. Bullshit. The Russians, during the Winter War against Finland, actually brought the Fedorov Avtomat out of storage. They needed more automatic weapons, so they pulled the Fedorov out of their storehouses and armed soldiers with it. So it was used to some extent in World War II. Now the Fedorov Avtomat, if you haven't played Battlefield 1, has a 25 round magazine, fires at 350 to 400 rounds per minute, and fires the 6.5 Arasaka cartridge. And from everything I remember about this gun, using it in Battlefield 1, we're not talking about the Degtyarev. We all know what a weird thing that was. We're talking about the regular old Fedorov. I love this gun. The slow rate of fire, well, not that great in close quarters, but it's good for a medium to short range firefight. And with the slow rate of fire, they could balance it to have a bit of a bigger punch than the faster rate of fire weapons. Speaking of faster fire rate, the last one for the assault class is the AVS-36. It fired 762 at a melting 800 rounds per minute, just short of the MG42's 900, with a 15-round magazine. Now this is another gun that was used through the Winter War and continued on after the invasion of the Soviet Union. This was a fully automatic gun, as you could tell by the 800 rounds per minute rate of fire. This would be an interesting one, because it could be like the 1906, where it's got a fast rate of fire, but a low magazine count. More for a hold the trigger and run style of play. Now moving on to the medic. Now the medic has always been my favorite class to play. Well, it's actually been split between medic and support, but whatever. For the medic, with the recent addition of the rifle carbines, I actually thought it would be pretty cool to give the medic the Mosin 1938 or the 1944 carbine. It fired 762, and it was literally just a shorter version of the Mosin for the scout class. It would be really interesting to actually be able to play as a medic with a half-decent mid-range rifle, similar to the Tromboncino and the Commando carbine. And for the SMGs, the PPSH-41. This very iconic gun fired the 762 by 25 Tokarev. Now I know you see 762 and you're thinking, well, that's a rifle cartridge. No, the 762 25 Tokarev was actually a little tiny small boy cartridge, fired at 900 rounds per minute from a 35 round box magazine or a 70 round drum. Now I would love this gun in the game, just to be running around like Reznov in Stalingrad. And lastly for the medic, we have the PPS-42. This could be balanced as more of a slower, more accurate SMG. It fired the 762 by 25 Tokarev cartridge, just like the PPSH-41, at 600 rounds per minute with a 35 round box magazine. Now like I said, it could be balanced as a little bit more of an accurate SMG, similarly to the MP34, and I think it would be a fairly good fit into the game. Now support was a little bit difficult for me to figure out what guns would work and what guns wouldn't. The first one was a no-brainer. The DP-28, the Dinner Plate 28, fired 762 at a rate of fire of 550 rounds per minute from a 47 or 60 round pan, or as I call it, a plate. This gun is amazing. I absolutely love the way this gun looks. It's just so weird. Tachanka fans would know exactly what this thing is. On a list of guns from World War II that the Soviet Union used, there was the RPD. Some of you may remember it from Black Ops 1, but it was there. Now, I removed the RPD from this list. It could have been balanced as an MMG. However, it saw limited use at the end of World War II. The gun was prepared for mass production in 1945 and saw limited use. After that, it went into the Cold War in Vietnam, and it was really not used in World War II, however, was made during and used a little bit. But I just kind of swept that one aside because it just didn't seem to fit, at least in my mind. And from what I could tell, there were no Russian shotguns during this time. I mean, you could go with another double-barreled shotgun, and I feel that would kind of fit. We had the Model 1900 in Battlefield 1's In the Name of the Tsar, but beyond that, the Russians had mostly no shotguns. At least military-sanctioned shotguns. And finally, the pistols. First up is the Nagant revolver. It was a 9-round revolver firing 762 by 38 cartridges. Now, this is another gun we saw in Battlefield 1. Called it the Rasputin because the legendary skin for it was called the Rasputin. I always loved using this gun. I used it up until I got the God gun, the Peacekeeper. I always bring it up just to rub it in Paul's face because he never got it. It was double or single action, depending on the model you got, and this was touted as the only revolver at the time that was ever able to be suppressed, because it when you fired it, the cylinder moved forward, creating a gas lock, so no gas would escape from the cylinder, making it silenceable. And for a semi-automatic pistol, the TT-33, firing the 7.62 by 25 Tokarev round from an 8-round magazine. We saw this in World at War. I'm not sure about COD World War II because, well, I pretty much stopped playing it before any of the DLCs came out. Now, gadgets are kinda iffy, as the Russians mostly used Lend-Leased anti-tank weapons, such as the American bazooka and the British Piat, as well as stolen German Panzerfausts and Panzerschrecks. However, they did have their own anti-tank grenade, the RPG-43. It was a shape-charged grenade, and it kind of took a little bit more skill with it because it had to hit it at a 90-degree angle, which is fucking ridiculous. However, I think they could balance it like the anti-tank grenade that's already in the assault classes arsenal. So like I said, it's a little bit difficult. But then again, that is what I got for the weapons that could come in the Eastern Front expansion of Battlefield 5. If you guys have any thoughts or comments, just put it down in the comments. If you want to see more, click that subscribe button to stay up to date with all things that I post. And I'll see you guys in the next one.